During our video on historical trauma, we explained that our ancestors' and elders' experiences in the world can have a great impact on our own lives. This often comes into play in school settings where Native students may continue to feel like the education system isn't a welcoming place for people like them. Currently, 1 in 4 Native American K-12 students do not graduate from high school, and only 19% of those students are admitted to college. Of that 19%, only 41% of Native students graduate from college. Native American students are placed into special education programs at a disproportionate rate and receive higher numbers of suspensions than many of their peers. There are a range of reasons for this, one of them being that traditionally the American school system is not a safe place for Native people. Around the year 1860, the Bureau of Indian Affairs began opening up Indian boarding schools across the nation, where the specified goal was to assimilate and convert Native children into mainstream Christian culture. Although some families sent their children willingly, many families were coerced or forced to place children in boarding schools where their hair was cut short, they were no longer allowed to speak their native languages, and were indoctrinated into Christianity. Colonel Richard Henry Pratt, famed headmaster of Carlisle Indian School, is credited with coining the phrase, "Kill the Indian, save the man," in regards to Indian boarding schools. At these schools, many children were beaten, killed, and some never returned home from school. It is common to hear stories of Native families hiding their children in caves and other safe places to avoid their being taken away and placed into boarding school. This practice continued all the way until 1978, when the Indian Child Welfare Act, also known as ICWA, provided Native families with additional protections and resources for education and for their children. Native students who were not placed in boarding schools may have assimilated into mainstream culture by taking on Spanish or English names in order to fit into public schools, and many didn't attend Western school at all. So how does this impact Native students' experiences in school today? For some students, their great-grandparents, grandparents, and even their parents attended Indian boarding schools or consciously assimilated into mainstream culture in order to fit into public schools. They have been raised with the fears associated with these experiences, namely forced family separation, forced assimilation, a legalization of or punishment for practicing traditions, fear of Native heritage being discovered. Because this violent legacy has not been fully addressed by the U.S. state and federal governments, the effects of this era of American education continue on. At the root of the racist and violent relationship between Native people and American education is the idea that Native people are inherently inferior to non-Native people. While Indian boarding schools no longer operate, the idea that Native people carry with them significant deficits is still common in education settings. Native students and parents report feeling regularly undermined, ignored, and judged by educational institutions. Researchers and Native elders alike suggest that this mistreatment is rooted in the fundamental difference in how traditional Native culture and mainstream American culture approach education. While dominant culture expects most education to occur inside the classroom, for many Native families, learning that happens outside of the school walls is equally, if not more, important. Traditionally, Native children learn by working alongside their elders and mentors, by listening to stories, by attending cultural events, and by being an active member of their tribal community or government. Elders have expressed concern that Native students are being judged as unintelligent or uninterested in school, even though they're considered to be future leaders in their home communities.